Everybody has a handout. There's hands on up here with questions and answers, the slides, everything, if you need them. We're going to go through the presentation. Phil's going to go through a presentation. Members that are here today from the committee are Raj, John, myself, Chris, Phil's here, Bob Chisholm's here, the director's here, as you saw, Lisa, and our town administrator's here if you have any questions. So Phil's going to go through this section, then we're going to have a financial impact section, and then at the end we'll go over any questions we may have today. So we'll turn it over to Phil and let's get going.
I don't see hardly anybody here who has any interest in senior center.
It's up to you.
So welcome. I live in Angel Brook. I'm a member of the Facilities Implementation and Strategic Planning Committee. Please let me call it FISP Committee. Even that's tough. There will be a question and answer period at the end, so please hold your questions till then. We'll stay here as long as it takes to answer all your questions. It is with great pleasure that I come before you to report that the FISP Committee has succeeded in fulfilling its pledge to you to reduce by a significant amount the total cost of the new senior center. You remember that in phase 1, the feasibility architect projected a total cost figure of $6.5 million with his proposed design. Working on phase 2, with our owner's project manager and the architect for the center, different from the feasibility architect and the same duo which brought us in on time and under budget for the police station, we have reduced the cost and improved the design to $5.7 million, based on a final firm construction bid of $4.6 million that we received in the last few days, which completed phase 2. Anita will go over the details of the finances on the financial slides in a little bit. So we now have a senior center designed for West Boylston at a significantly lower cost than the original projections, ready to begin phase 3 construction, which will be voted at the special town meeting on the 28th and on the ballot question on the 27th. Just a quick note, I'm going to really fire through this. This 3-phase plan that we've been working on, that we told you about, has served us well. Escalated to contingencies were carefully put in place. We included soil testing in phase 2, for example, to avoid surprises in the construction phase. It's important to note that the $4.6 million construction bid for phase 3 construction must be implemented in a timely manner for the bid to hold, since bids have time limits. That's why we told you at the last town meeting that you should plan to vote for the construction funding at this election and town meeting so that we stay on track, take advantage of the reduced cost, this highly advantageous bid, and avoiding the risk of losing any of the funds already spent. Of the $1.1 million appropriated for phase 2, at least at last town meeting, we have spent, Anita, help me with this. We talked about that figure this morning.
We have roughly a balance of $668,000 left from that original $1.1 million.
So as we told you, if we don't spend that 1.1, that remainder will go into against the construction costs. It's important to note also that in the money that has been spent, the total architect fee is included. The low bid is from RAC Construction, the same builder as for the police station, which I said came in on time and under budget. So we now have the same OPM, architect, and builder we had with the police station. Now, in the history of municipal finance, no one has been able to guarantee a final price outcome in advance. But the FISP has come close. What the FISP committee has achieved is a well-designed senior center at the most efficient cost. You should also be aware that the borrowing needed to build the senior center fits well within our borrowing limits. Indeed, now is probably the best time to do it with our debt exposure so low. It is entirely at the discretion of the town meeting and the voters to finance a new senior center. There's been a new development regarding the current space. The lease runs out in June 2019, and the landlord has informed us that the lease will not be renewed. We can stay to lend, but the lease will not be renewed. However, because he has a tenant which wants to lease the entire building, he would like us to leave by late spring this year. With the landlord's assistance, we've just completed an exhaustive search for temporary space which showed that there is no suitable rental space in West Boylston for the senior center. None. While final decisions have not been made, we may have to erect modular units on town-owned property until the new building is completed. Now, the landlord will assist us with this earlier move, but this will make more program limiting space restrictions even more acute, and attendance will be further suppressed. Fortunately, if we stay on track with construction approval at this election and town meeting, the new building will be completed before the June 2019 lease expiration date. The time and the need are upon us. Remember also, we are the only one of surrounding towns that does not have its own senior center. The entrance to the senior center at Hartwell Business Park, where we now reside, 3,500 usable square feet, inadequate. The required figure is 8,500 square feet, planned and designed in the new building. Note the main and only entrance, many of you know this well, opens directly onto the parking lot. No room for walks, only to your car. This is the reception area. Forgive me for belaboring the obvious to most of you. Despite the limitations, including the inadequate kitchen, 6,000 meals on wheels were coordinated through the center last year, and 3,400 in-house meals were served. Note that there are no windows in the two main gathering places. No way to let the sun or the outdoors in to brighten up the atmosphere. Another factor that inhibits programming and suppresses attendance. Just tomorrow, there is a Valentine's lunch, which is oversubscribed with a substantial waiting list. We can only put 49, 50 people in here. A huge problem is with privacy. A huge problem is with privacy for health clinics and legal and financial consults. Currently, for example, medical professionals working with each patient must walk all the way across the center to the bathroom to wash and return to the next patient, time after time. This problem is solved in the wellness center, the new center, which I will show you on the floor plan when we come to it. Over 8,069 visitations last year is recorded by the scanning into the computer. Possibly as many as 20% more who visited but didn't scan. A word about attendance statistics. It's standard throughout the Commonwealth that monthly attendance is 30 to 50% of total senior population. So at 8,069 visitations, we're right in the ballpark. According to our research, we can expect significantly more, perhaps as many as 70 to 20,000 visitations in the first year of a new facility. In fact, we kept close tabs on Sterling, as I'm sure most of you have, and hear that they are already talking about expansion because the new center is too small and the attendance so large. Similar increase occurred in Holyoke. The Great Tsunami, West Boylston senior population expected to double by 2030, from 25% in 2010 to 33% in 2015, projecting out to 36% in 2020. Salient point is clear. West Boylston's older adult population is a significant percentage of the overall population, and it's more likely to increase than decrease. The mix to property. It's already town-owned, saving land purchase, building demolition, and site preparation costs. No property gets removed from the tax rolls. It's the former site of the senior center, located within 2 miles of the town common. All utilities are already on the site, and the town has a sewer easement to Horseshoe Drive. Value will be added to the 6.1 acre property with new parking for current users and upgraded amenities. The ball fields will be preserved with added parking. Here's a bird's eye view, and we have an architect's drawing in the next slide. Notice this is where the senior center is. This is Prescott Street, Route 12 down here. Whoops. And this is south. The entrance is on the south side for light. Here's the architect's drawing. This is the building, and the parking, forgive me, I keep hitting that. And the parking lot, as it's laid out, ball field over here. Here are the elevations. Keolu and Bienick, the architect, was chosen, as I said, because of our satisfactory experience with them on the police station. The town was fortunate in that Lisa, our council on aging director, is a trained architect, uniquely positioned to work with John McMillan of CBA to produce a floor plan based on current programs and documented current and projected future needs. So let's look at the rendering. This is what faces Prescott Street. Back here, the taller ridge line is the multi-purpose room. This is the multi-purpose room on the south elevation. This is the entryway. Notice all the fenestration, many windows, letting all kinds of light in. There's a portico where the people with difficulty moving can unload here in the event of rain, etc. A simple, to me, a simple but elegant building. Here's the floor plan. We have 8,500 design square feet. 10,300 gross square feet is, includes stairwells and walls and building support, and utilities and things like that. The 8,500 net square feet is space that we can use for programming, etc. Here's the multi-purpose room, 210 when it's set up auditorium style or for lectures or movies or whatever. It can be separated in two. When it's set up, so two events can go on there at once. When it's set up for eating, the capacity is 150. We have 2 pool tables. We need 2 in order to qualify for senior tournaments statewide. Arts and crafts. Here's the wellness room that I mentioned. Notice there's a sink, so the medical professional can work with a patient and not have to go all around the building to clean up, etc. Here's the kitchen, lobbyway, director's office.
Where's the storage area?
There's no storage, we're going to put everything outside. Here's one.
Well,
Well, absolutely.
that's
Very
weird.
good. Very good question. Here's one storage area. There's some storage in here.
Oh, yeah.
There's storage here.
Yeah.
So you're absolutely right. I mean, without it, the building will die. It won't work. Okay, let me find my place if I may. Remember the Rockland experience we discussed at the last town meeting? They're somewhat larger than us. Their visitation senior population figures were comparable. In the first year of their new center, attendance went up to 20,000, and this year is projected at 37,000. So our research has been pretty complete. We've talked to center directors all over the state, right? And we know that a new senior center will attract a significantly larger number of attendees. The new senior center will be a town resource, available in the evenings and on weekends to schedule performances of all kinds, Girl and Boy Scout meetings, bridge clubs, lectures, nature walks, bird watching, even voting, and perhaps a town meeting, only up to your imagination. Let me emphasize this will be a community resource available for many individual and townwide activities. The policy for community use using the guidelines for use of public buildings in West Boylston as a template is already in place. The schedule, you only have to contact the director and fill out the forms, and things will move forward from there. Finally, before we turn to finances, and I'll give the pointer to Anita, here's a quick recap on what happens next, in phase 3. With your approval of the election on February 27th and at the town meeting on the 28th, remember we have to vote both at town meeting and on the ballot item on the election ballot February 27th. We will begin construction with a target completion date of 2019. That brings us to a more detailed look at the financing. I would ask you to keep one number in mind as you listen. When I sit down to write my quarterly tax check, I will pay an average of $35 more, which comes to 40 cents a day. For an average homeowner like myself, it comes to 40 cents a day for a new senior center for West Boylston that we can all be proud of. Anita. You want that?
Good afternoon, I'm Anita Schipers, your town administrator. These expense and financial slides were put together by 2 members of the FISP committee who come from either the finance committee or previous members of the finance committee. And in their stead today, I'll try to go through the slide to give you their information. In terms of the capital expense of the building itself, what is it going to cost us to build this building? We've tried to identify the different categories of expense that add up to what we call the total project cost. Starting with the architectural and the project management, or what you might hear us refer to as OPM costs. So that would be a total of $550,000. It's important to point out that we've already spent some of that, and so moving forward, we'll just be spending the remainder amount necessary for those ongoing services. But if we look at that total project cost, those will add up to $550,000. For construction, now this is an important number to discuss. This slide shows the construction value at being $4.55 million. But what it actually means is that the bid that we received from our apparent low bidder, RAC, that same company that built the police station under budget, that bid was $4.251 million. So our members of the FISP committee that put together these financial slides, they rounded up to $4.3 million for the assumed value of the RAC contract. To that number, they've also added on some construction-related expenses, such as additional testing of materials during construction. You know, the concrete needs to be tested during construction, those types of things. So they've added on those additional values that we have in our budget in that construction line item. So that's why it appears more than the 4.251 that we have as a bid from our low bidder. Under the furniture, fixtures, and equipment, that totals to $321,000, and that includes the new furnishings. It includes kitchen fit-up that won't be included in the general contractor's construction. It includes some of the other equipment such as copiers, etc., new computer system that would be integrated into the building. It would include phone systems, all of those miscellaneous expenses that come under furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. There's also a very healthy contingency line in here, and the contingency is used as a cushion, so to speak, to help cover any unforeseen expenses that might come up during the construction phase. We know that there's some ledge on the site there, and we need to make sure that we have enough money here in this total project budget to cover that in case it's more than the contractor anticipated. We want to be sure we have enough to pay for change orders, to cover ledge or other things that might pop up during construction. There's also a design contingency. If in the middle of construction we find that we have to make some modifications to the design for whatever reason, there's some money built into that contingency line to pay the architect to do that. And then it also provides a cushion so that if we as a town decide that we want to add something to this building to make it a higher value for you, to improve something, to add additional furniture that we hadn't originally anticipated, this is the line we would draw from to cover those extra expenses. So when you add up all these different categories, we're looking at a total project cost of $5.7 million. And again, I want to stress that this is probably a very high conservative number. If we are fortunate, as we were with the police station construction, the actual construction and the actual project cost will be much less than this. But I believe that the creators of these slides were trying to be fiscally conservative and try to put a value that was a tad higher so that there'd be no unfortunate surprises during the construction phase. So we're going to hope that, as we have at the police station, that the actual construction cost will be lower than this. We also had some questions this past spring, you may recall, about what is it going to cost to actually run this building, because that will be an additional cost to the town as well. So using both the police station and town hall as an example to pull estimated data from, we determined that there will be some additional annual costs for this building that are not currently built in to the COA's annual budget. Those include some additional janitorial services, extra hours for a custodian to clean this building. It's a larger building, there'll be more to take care of. So we're building in some money for extra janitorial hours. There'll be additional supplies necessary for the kitchen, for the bathrooms, for the cleaning and maintenance of the building. We have the utility costs, we have the electric, we'll have the gas, we'll have water, and we'll have sewer. Those items are not currently built into the COA annual operating budget. They're part of the lease that we have with the building owner here. We'll have insurance costs for this building as well. This is a new building that would be added to our insurance rolls, and we're estimating that to be a little bit over $8,000. And then we have a line that we're calling maintenance. For every town building that we have, we try to put in each year's budget, a sum of money that can be used for regular, routine, preventive maintenance for that building. It's the right thing to do. We put a lot into these buildings. We need to maintain them. But because we know that this building would only come into operational budget for a portion of the FY19 operating budget year, we're only inserting $4,000 into this first year's amount for that. So when we add up all of those different categories, it comes to $56,600. However, we have to take into account that we're already paying in our annual operating budget about $36,000 as lease that we pay to the owner of this building. So if we subtract that $36,600 from the $56,600, what we're looking at is an additional $20,000 a year in operating costs to run this building that we're not already paying. So everyone will always be asking, what is the impact on our taxes for this? And this slide shows you what the tax impact would be for those operating expenses we just talked about, and also for the capital expense, the actual construction of the building that we talked about in the slide before. For the additional operating expenses, that $20,000 a year that we just saw, if you assume the median home value, meaning a home that has a value of $289,955, that's what we call our average home value currently in town, the tax impact of that extra $20,000 a year would be $7.83. That's for the operating side of the tax impact. For the capital side, the construction of the building, again, for that average household, we're looking at a borrowing that would be for 20 years, and we're assuming an interest rate of 4.125%. That's a guess. We have spoken with our bond advisor to find out what should we be using as an assumed interest rate. Now you have to remember that when we go and build this building, we are not doing it in a permanent borrowing the way you do for a mortgage that lasts over a number of years. We do a temporary borrowing using very low interest rate bands, State House notes. And once the building is constructed and we know exactly what that final construction cost is, then and only then do we go out and do what we call permanent borrowing. So, assuming we stay on track with this project, we won't be doing our permanent borrowing until this building is completed in the spring of June 2019, somewhere in that time frame. We don't know exactly what the interest rates will be next spring, but our bond advisor was telling us we should look at 4% as a safe interest rate to use. We made the decision to be a little bit more conservative, and we bumped it up to be 4.125%. We don't know what it will be, but this is what we're basing our assumptions on. So using that assumption, for a 20-year borrowing for the total project of $5.7 million, the impact of the average household would be $132.32 for the year. Now, if you look at the actual 20-year borrowing schedule, it starts out a little bit lower at first, starts a little bit less at the end as well. But for the most part, the average cost over the 20 years for that median value home will be $130.32. So this includes all the expenses. It includes the original $1.1 million and includes the extra $4.6 million that we're going to be asking you to approve at the special town meeting on the 28th. Now, some people have said, well, what was the interest rate we were paying for the police station? That was down to 2.499%, but that was back in November of 2017, and a lot has changed with the market and the interest rate since then. You know, you see the news, you see that there's a lot of volatility. So we're trying to give you the best information we have. We're trying to make the smartest assumptions we can right now in terms of what that interest rate will be for that 20-year borrowing when we do our permanent borrowing next year.
How much did you say was remaining from the 1.1 million?
It's approximately $668,000 and change. So that will be carried over into the construction
Right.
phase.
So can that be deducted from the 4.3 million that you're asking the town to
I think the better way to look at it, if I can go back to this slide, the better way to look at it is this total project cost of the $5.7 million. As I've talked about with the architectural and project management costs, some of that has already been spent. In some of the construction-related costs, such as we did the soil testing. I think Phil mentioned that we tried to be conservative and do some good soil testing on the property before we started designing the facility, so we would know what we might be dealing with for impacts on construction. So within some of these categories, we have already spent a portion of that $1.1 million, leaving us free and clear of roughly $668,000. So if we take the $668,000 and change and add it to the $4.6 million that we're going to be asking you to approve the borrowing for at both the special election and the special town meeting, that will be more than enough to tide over all the remaining costs that we have. We'll be facing the construction phase.
I have one more question. This doesn't include any grant money for anything. I know that some senior
Correct.
projects can be put in for grants, say like for a kitchen or for patio furniture or whatever.
And we'll be talking about that in a
Okay.
later slide. Yeah.
But Linda, on your next slide where you have additional costs to the town, you're actually missing something, and that would be additional staff to run the senior center. Because if you're going to have a much bigger building and have more meals, you know, we're not really gonna wanna bring our own paper plates to eat off of. So, you know, having additional staff and funds to run the center would be, really should be outlined.
That is true. This does not take into account any additional staffing that might be necessary. That's true. These are only facility-related costs. Okay, in terms of the grants or donations, we have looked at all of the grant programs that would be available through state and federal funding, and unfortunately, there are no grants that we can apply for at this time. There will be smaller grants that we can apply for at the state level and private foundation level once we move ahead and get town meeting and town election approved for the project. Typically, that type of funding isn't available until a community has made a commitment to move that project ahead. The other thing is that we already are seeing some significant gearing up of fundraising efforts made by the seniors, and I think Phil can speak to that a little bit more, but we do know that there have been some pledges from folks who are willing to support the project by putting money forward. But again, once the town meeting and the town election votes take place, and this project is moving forward, all of that effort will go into a much higher rate of speed, and you'll be hearing a lot more about fundraising efforts moving forward. In terms of the actual votes that will be taking place, so at the election on Tuesday, the 27th, the actual ballot vote does not refer to a dollar amount. And I know that's confused some people in the past. This actual language of this ballot question is dictated by the state. Department of Revenue is very limited in terms of what they will allow us to put forward in the language for this ballot vote. So you'll see that basically all it's asking you is if you'll allow the town to exempt from Prop 2.5 the amount needed to pay for the bond to cover this project. And that's for the construction, purchase of any related equipment, and any architect or owner's project management costs or any other costs incidental or related thereto. So there is no dollar value assigned here, but this question by law is tied to the special town meeting article number 1, which will give that dollar value of 4.6 million. And so we are not allowed to move forward based on just this vote. We also have to get town meeting approval of Article 1, and that's where we're moving, asking the town to appropriate the sum of $4.6 million to construct the facility. And you can see in the underlined section of the text, and I recognize that it's hard to read on the screen, it's saying that this vote is contingent upon approval by the voters of a ballot question to exclude those amounts required to be paid for the bonds from Proposition 2.5. So both of these, the ballot question and town meeting article, are tied together. We need both to pass to give us the authority to go ahead and borrow that $4.6 million.
By how much percentage? Is it 2/3 for the?
For town meeting, it requires a 2/3 vote. For the ballot question, it only requires a majority vote.
Who's lobbying for us in Washington to get grants?
Senator Chandler is doing
Oh
a good
my
job.
God, who? Chandler and Odette. Are they here?
No, they're not.
Oh.
Do you want me to do the Plan B or?
Well, go ahead.
Okay. All right, at the informational meeting that we had on Saturday morning, someone asked the question, what happens if neither of these votes pass? What's our Plan B? And unfortunately, right now, the answer to that is we do not have a firm Plan B. We do not have any other option to turn to. Once our lease is up in June of 2019, if we don't have authority to move ahead and go with this project, that leaves us having to scramble to find alternative plans. So that would be a discussion that the town would need to take, to have a serious discussion that would need to take place if we find that both the special election and the town meeting votes fail.
Before I turn it over to Chris, Dr. Tom Mullen wanted to say a couple of words. Do you need a stop, Tom?
No, I'll just stand right here. I'm a retired neurologist, for those that don't know what I am around town. And as I think about this, there's 3 aspects that can be addressed as to the potential benefit of the senior center. The first is a creation of a space where seniors can meet and do a lot to eliminate loneliness. I was listening on NPR the other night, and they actually have a minister for loneliness in Britain because they have so many people that are not able to get the social contacts necessary to continue on. And it turns out that if you have a significant amount of loneliness, the risk factor for short-term living is equal to perhaps smoking 10 or 15 cigarettes a day. It's that much of a problem. So you really need a space where socialization can take place, and the benefit of it is becoming rapidly more apparent. The second aspect is, and this is a little bit personal, and that was six weeks ago I fell on the ice. Now, I didn't break anything, but as soon as you have a fall, it puts you in a category where you're at risk for another fall. So what I'm starting to embark on, now that I'm starting to recover, is to get involved to a greater degree in balance training. And we don't have the space here to conduct any type of significant balance training, be it yoga, Qigong, Tai Chi, even Zumba. All of those activities that lend themselves to balance training are an absolute necessity as we get older. And the statistics are staggering that if you fell down and break a hip, you've got a 50% mortality in the next 5 years. It's that high. And I will tell you, we have a circumstance in our own family where my mother-in-law had a 13-year course with Alzheimer's disease. And during the 13 years, she had 2 fractured hips. She had no other hospitalizations in the 13 years outside of the hospitalization for the fractured hips. And what kept her going was, in fact, my wife taking her to the Worcester Senior Center and to the Y and doing senior yoga and other balance training. Otherwise, she would have not lived as long as she did. She died at age 93. The third aspect is kind of a projection of pie in the sky, which is the role and the potential role of a community nurse in the wellness center. As much as I hate to admit it, there may be a role for telemedicine. And so it may come to a time where somebody will need an immediate, fairly quick look at a problem that could be answered with a nurse present, and through telemedicine may be quite helpful, in addition to the usual functions that the community nurses have, which is the regular follow-up of problems and addressing those kind of little in-between cases where care can be given with the help of a nurse. Another great program on PBS, Rhode Island has 1 community health nurse left in the state. She's in Block Island. I don't know if she's still living, but she was in her 80s. She's been doing it for 50 years. And she looks after all the older seniors in the island, traveling around with her daughter who drives her to do all the health checks. It's quite a program. But I thought to myself, that'd be great if they had a center in Block Island where everybody could get together and move accordingly. So those are the 3 aspects that I've been thinking of as to the potential benefit. Thank you.
Okay, now we're going to answer any questions. Here's just the question. The ballot vote is going to be February 27th, and that will be at the Lady Good Council from noon till 8. And then the next day, the special town meeting will be at 7 p.m. at the middle high school. And that will need 2/3 vote. And just a few questions in regards to the $5.7 million. We will only borrow at the end what we spend. If we can get the project done less, if there is fundraising, we'll only borrow what's the final project price. And then in regards to grants, we have tried for grants, every chance we get, through the senator, through the
Do you
state.
send somebody down to Washington?
We've never gone to Washington, I can
Well, that's
guarantee
where they
that.
get the money from.
Well, we can go to, I'd love to say we can go to Washington and get grants. We have
Well,
not.
they do it.
We have not.
Well, we do it. They
We
do
go to
it.
our state representative, but, we're one town of 351, so.
Okay, look, I mean, let me say this. Now, did anybody talk to Sterling about the mistakes they made?
Yes, the director has been to, Lisa, you've been to Sterling, any issue? You've talked to them about, before we planned our building, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, but let me tell you this. 2 big problems down there. I talked to them down there. I'm nobody, I talked. They only got 2 temperature, you know? In the whole boat, 2 zones only.
Yeah.
All right, they're fighting to get. You're gonna have every room a difference, because like when you say somebody's gonna be doing yoga, somebody's gonna do this, pools and everything else. You're just gonna have 2 zones.
We have
Even
to-
the average house today don't even have 2
We
zones.
have to the point in our system that we have in this building, if the shades are open and the sun's on, it controls the room. If the shades are down and it's not sunny out, it controls the room, each room. So it's zoned, it's a new building, it's gonna have all the
That
energy.
was a new building, and they're suing
Peter,
to try to get
excuse
that
me.
corrected.
There's 6 zones designed in this building.
What's that?
6
Six
zones.
different
6
zones.
zones are designed in this building. There's different zones. So we won't have the same problem that Sterling has. If the building goes through.
Okay, no problem.
Chris, so if we come in under budget, say $4 million, just for sake, then that means that the implication for the 2019 taxes will be less than what's projected right now.
Correct.
So we need to let everybody know that at the town meeting, that it will be lower.
Well, when the project's done, that's when we make the final borrowing.
Okay.
You're using the same construction company that you used for the police station. Is the town happy with the results of the police station?
Yes, They came in within budget, a little below, and they came in before the date that they were gonna be done, so.
I mean, the physical building was, everything was made to
Yeah,
specification.
everybody's happy.
I just have one question about the town meeting. Is anybody going to actually explain, just like Anita just explained this whole thing, is anybody gonna do that? Is she gonna do that?
No, we will do the same presentation at town meeting.
With all the information that?
Everything in this presentation will be expanded unless Anita has something more to add to that.
What we're also doing is, I'm going to be recording a Q&A session with the help of our cable TV staffers, and that will be available on our cable channel and via YouTube through the internet. And it will have the same type of Q&A format, so there'll be a lot of that same information that I went over in that recording session. And I'm not sure if that's going to be done Wednesday or Thursday, but it should be available through either the cable channels or YouTube by the end of the day on Thursday.
I just hope people watch that.
We-
I'm just afraid that the town meeting, nobody's going to explain like you just.
No, the town meeting, the entire slideshow will be presenting the entire slideshow.
Okay.
And there will be a talk, yes.
Okay, go.
Hi, I have a two-part question. My first part was this the original floor plan that was voted on last year? Or was it increased in size?
I don't recall, was it increased in size? I don't recall. I think this is
This is
the
the
number.
same one?
This is the number we've stayed with probably
You mean
throughout.
at last year's town meeting?
Yeah, when they
Same.
asked for the 1.1
Yeah,
to get
same,
started.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then my other question was, were any grants looked into before you asked for the 1.1? Because what that did was kind of put you out of the ballpark. In one of your presentations in your pamphlet on line 15, it talked about if you had gone ahead and applied for grants first before asking for that 1.1, now they won't let you do that. It was in one of your slide presentations.
Yeah, excuse me, I think it's the other way around, but Anita, can you answer? I think it's the other way around.
It's a different type of, it was on your pamphlet and it was posted by Raj, and we looked down, we saw 15, so it was a little bit confusing. I know there's other grants available after,
Right.
but we can't dial it back now because you've already appropriated funds to get started.
Correct.
So were any funds asked for prior to asking for the 1.1?
We had been doing some research to see if there was any grant funding available for construction before we went out and
Okay.
requested the $1.1 million.
Yeah.
And there were not at that time.
Okay.
The convoluted grant program that you're referring to
Yeah.
is from the Department of Housing and Community Development. And they have a unique grant program in that they require that you apply for the grant and get approval of any grant award from them before you then go to town meeting and get town meeting approval of the remaining funds needed.
And we didn't do that.
We didn't do that,
Okay.
and so in order to follow that process, that means we'd be delayed by a year in moving ahead with this. And so
Okay.
that would null and
You
void
can't
that.
dial
So
back
somebody
now.
dropped the ball
No.
again.
Okay, good, that clarifies
Why
that.
weren't they doing this 2 years ago then? I don't know, okay, it's like water is gone. Go ahead.
I have several questions I wanted to ask you about the building ledger on that slide. The windows, they do open for fresh air?
Yes, the window's open, yeah.
Okay, and they did the acoustic study, so the break room is actually usable?
Yes, we added a little more money into that to make sure that it's
Okay.
good.
And on the kitchen, what's its capacity for serving food? You know, the seating, from what I remember from another meeting, said you could seat 150 people. And what's the kitchen?
We can seat, at tables, we can seat 115, 150 with tables.
210 for lectures, demonstrations.
Will the kitchen,
Will the
yes.
kitchen have the capacity to serve, say, a big crowd?
Yes.
Okay, and my last question is, how long do you expect this building to be usable? How many generations are going to benefit by us getting it now?
I'm not gonna say that here, and then
You won't be alive.
in 30 or 40 years, everybody will be fine.
I would just say it.
But
Yes,
I
but we
don't,
don't want to have to
No.
Place it for the next year.
Oh, yeah.
I don't foresee we're gonna be needing to add to this building for the future. I mean, this town, what you see is what you get. We're figuring for the expanding in seniors, so this building, I think, will help us, no problem. And I can't give you a date.
You know what?
1 second. Mr.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, but you know, some of the points should be like mentioned, just so, you know, you don't have the other people asking you the same questions.
Okay, well, that question and answer that we passed out, we add questions to it all the time, so we can add that question to it.
Okay.
Any other questions?
The big dig was supposed to be $1 to $2 billion. It ended up at 13 billion. There's nothing in writing.
One thing I can guarantee is we won't go over that.
Why? What's the guarantee? We word of
We
mouth.
won't go to that $1 billion.
You know, the worst people to deal with is construction workers, guys that own it, because they always cut corners for a nickel and a dime. They have to make a profit. You know, and the only ones, I don't know. You gotta be careful on the construction, make sure, because they're only gonna give you what they have to give you and what you talk about. They don't think they're gonna come to them afterwards and say, well, we need more of this and we need more of that. And they say, oh, wait a minute, whoa, we gotta put on this and more.
That's why we have an owner project manager and a clerk of the works is on the site all the time. We have no issues with that.
No. So nothing in writing.
Everything, the contract, everything will be in writing.
No, I mean, they can still, that figures that you're giving us is not in writing.
Yes, it is.
It's in writing.
They're bids. They're solid bids. They're bids for
Solid
projects.
bids.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, my understanding from what you've already addressed was the communities, the senior center will be available to the community by setting up appointments ahead of time to schedule events, such as in the evenings or on the weekends.
Correct.
What about like on school vacation weeks or things like that, when there are people in the community that are looking for something to do with their children within the town? Will it be available possibly just on those weeks?
Well, the senior center will be running on those weeks during the day.
Right.
So at nights, or I'm sure if the director can see that there's a room available,
Yeah.
I'm sure she will put them in.
Oh, great. As long as they book something in advance,
As
right?
long as they talk to the director and there's a form already set in place.
Okay.
To add on to that, we don't know. The policy, when the time goes on, how many people are going to use it,
Right.
what groups comes in, and also, what groups get the preference. As the town group, or the individual groups, or outside groups, you can have a wedding reception over there, So like that, those things has to be
They have to be worked out as we
worked
go
out when
along.
the time goes on.
Okay.
We'll learn through the experience.
Yeah.
Some groups comes in, ruin the whole thing. Can we still allow it? So those are all the things, we don't have it right now.
No, you
But we
wouldn't.
will make a policy, that's,
Yeah,
Okay,
you
any
can't write a
other-
policy before you have to.
yeah.
Any other questions, or any questions you have? So we can add them to our question and answer. Okay, so there's the, well, we have more meetings coming up. If you know anybody else that wants to come to a meeting, we have all of these set in place. The next one is Thursday at 3 o'clock in Angel Brook, and then we'll be at the library Thursday night. So there's the,
Next week, Wednesday at 6 o'clock, right?
Yeah.
yeah, Wednesday at 6 o'clock, the town hall, and then Thursday.
There'll be repeats of this.
This exact presentation, and then we add, if we had questions here that we want to add to the slide, we add them, then we add them to the question and answers. And there's the next votes, the next dates. Okay, if there's no more questions, thanks very much. Oh, wait a second.
Anything else on the ballot other than the senior center?
No,
No.
just the one question.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much. Thanks for coming. Have a good day.
Uh,
What's the other question?